Welcome to another episode of Anti Moonboy News. This is Xenu. It's episode 23, and we got a good one for you today. Lots of stuff going on around the world of digital cash. We'll be talking about eXch closing, more Zcash groveling, among other things. And, we're going to look at the latest in scams using Monero to bait people. So we're going to go through all that and more. But first, we have some Superchats to get to. You can go to xmrchat.com/Xenu. If you would like to participate, you can send me a donation, and I will read it and answer on the show. Or comment if it's just not a question. And anyways, the first one here is from Sheldon, who donates 0.1489 XMR. That gets an air horn. He says, Attack of the Poison Outputs episode 24 at 5 minutes 10 seconds. After full chain membership proofs ++ and Carrot, is Monero post-quantum ready? The chain would only need to hard fork to migrate to post-quantum to prevent quantum attacks. You can ask that as a question. I think so, ... Or is there additional protocol development needed? Well, thank you very much for that donation, Sheldon. And yeah, that's a good question. So, with quantum computing, the main thing that we have to say here is that everything is changing very quickly. And how we defend against these hypothetical attacks is also changing. There's just a lot of research going, and I think the video I made that you're referencing is probably already dated because of, how quickly things are accelerating. Now, regarding your question, though, currently Monero is not post-quantum ready. However, after the upcoming hard fork, there will be changes made that will prepare Monero for post-quantum. Now, will it fix everything completely? I don't think so. And there's a lot of variables at play, and I'll be honest with you, I don't fully understand this as well because things are changing so much. But the idea here is that Monero will have forward secrecy after this upcoming hard fork, meaning that if you have your access to your funds, when you use those funds later on, it will essentially churn them into a post-quantum algorithm, and then you'll be protected. So things like that will be very good. The problem, though, is does that solve everything with quantum computing? No, it doesn't. For example, we would need to implement a new form of, I guess the current ring CT system where it shields the amounts, that isn't quantum proof. So we would need to change that as well. I am honestly not sure if that is coming with the hard fork or if that's built into full chain membership proofs ++. That would be a question for the research lab. But I believe that would also have to be added on top of things. I am also under the impression that if you have access to old Monero addresses, it could be possible to hack into them and then steal funds. I know this is the case for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has a lot of issues going forward because if quantum computing comes, people will be able to essentially look through old Bitcoin addresses that haven't moved funds and steal those Bitcoin. This is an issue that was brought to attention recently by Jameson Lopp. I talked about it on this program a few episodes ago, where there's a debate that's ongoing of whether or not Bitcoin should hard fork and prevent people from even using those old Bitcoin wallets that haven't updated to post-quantum algorithms. Because the thing is, if you don't update your Bitcoin wallet, like say if there was a soft fork, and if you don't update, then your old Bitcoin that hasn't moved in over a decade, it can get stolen. So there's arguments of whether or not Bitcoin should do a hard fork to prevent that from happening, or if we should just let the free market kind of go ahead, and if that Bitcoin gets stolen, it gets stolen. So there's like a lot of like questions involved with that. It's a very complicated subject. Now with Monero, I believe that this would also be an issue. Like if there was like an old Monero wallet that hasn't migrated, then like old Monero could get stolen through quantum computing. But again, this is a topic that is very confusing, and it's kind of changing a lot. But yeah, you are correct that Monero does need to migrate to post-quantum, and because of that, it would need a hard fork. I really don't buy a soft fork solving this. This is something that we have to all agree on as a community. Anyway, long story short, this is actively being researched right now, and this is absolutely a point of focus. And from the way I look at it, after we get full chain membership proofs, implemented, and with Carrot as well, I think a lot of attention is going to be put into fortifying everything else related to post-quantum attacks. And so the good news is that because this is like a cat and mouse game, if there is like advances in post-quantum, we can probably use those advances as well to protect ourselves. So it's kind of like we're kind of just developing as things go along. All right. The good news, again, is that the Monero Research Lab is well aware of this, and they've been making preparations. And that goes for Bitcoin as well. They are aware of these issues, and there's internal debates happening. So the good news is things are already being updated. So good question, though. This is definitely not going away. And hopefully we get some more clarity as to when full chain membership proofs and Carrot is coming. I actually do have an update for you about that later in this episode to give you a little teaser of the Monero news. But yeah, it's absolutely important that we get on top of this. Okay. Next question is from Microwave, who donates 0.185 XMR. That's another air horn. Thank you very much. They say, Robot loved how I heated his stuff so fast. Now he's crossing wires with cheap Chinese toaster in Italy. Tell Bot his friend Darnell came over today and turned me on pressing buttons Bot never knew I had. I made his food so hot, Bot and I are finished, all in capitals. Well, thank you very much, Microwave Up. I got good news for you. My robot's actually here. He's back from his trip from Italy, and he is very pleased with this message that you sent him, and he's going to be responding to you now. So I'm going to put him on. Robot, take it away.
Beep boop. Yes, I am back from Italy, and I had a great time checking out all of the kitchen appliances made from the Italy land. They are unique in that they have different electrical outputs and inputs. It is very interesting, and I like to diversify my portfolio, if you know what I mean. Beep boop.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Do you have any responses to that, super chat? They did donate, 0.18 Monero, so I think they want to hear from you.
Beep boop. I do not remember who that is. Does she belong in my harem that I have at the Lowe's appliance section that you take me to every weekend? Beep boop.
Yeah, well, I wish I had some more information for you, but I also don't know who this is, so unfortunately, it doesn't look like my robot remembers you. Anyway, let's give a round of applause for Robot for appearing on the show. I feel bad for like the 3 people who are listening to this program for the first time and have absolutely no idea what's going on. Yeah. I think one thing I do want to do with this channel is I wanted to have other characters as well. Not a lot, but I have another character I've written that I'm going to try to work into some episodes in the near future. But yeah, it was funny. Like the original idea was to have like at the end of each Anti Moonboy news, like a little like non sequitur from Robot, but I just keep forgetting to put him on, and so he kind of. Anyway, he's been in Italy, so I haven't been able to put him on the program, but we got him back on the show today. So thank you for that donation, Microwave. And after this program, we will be going to Lowe's. He wants to check out the appliances there, his harem, as he puts it. And yeah, so thanks for the donations, guys. Again, xmrchat.com/Xenu if you would like to donate. So I want to give an update on Dark Net Maximalism. It's being delayed. Yeah. Unfortunately, the t-shirts that was supposed to be sent to my P.O. box, it got sent back to the sender. There's a whole thing going on. So I'm on top of it, trying to get that straightened out. But because the t-shirts are delayed, it's kind of pushing everything back. And I was thinking that I do want an extra couple weeks to fine-tune the manifesto so it isn't total crap. No, it's good. But I think a couple weeks in addition to what I already have will be beneficial. So it's just a better product overall. So we'll be delaying things. It will be May, though. If I don't have the t-shirts by the end of May, then I'm just going to release the manifesto anyway because it's basically done at this point. And I'm really happy with it and how it came out. I will also be releasing a, I guess, audiobook version, which I think I'm just going to have it as a podcast RSS feed. And I will also be releasing separate videos from the manifesto on YouTube and all my, and on, Rumble, for example, and Odyssey as well. So you'll have access to that as well. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's get to the news. We're going to start this week, lead-off story regarding the eXch exchange. I'm just going to call them exchange. They have announced they are officially shutting down operations effective May 1st. This is a big story because eXch was the primary exchange that was used in the Bybit hack. The Bybit hack, which happened, a couple months ago. And I have been saying repeatedly that this is going to be used to expand regulations, and I'm holding to that. I think that, these guys are going to be targeted. And as I'm about to read for you, they actually are being targeted, which is why they shut down. So this is from bitcointalk.org. They made a public post about this. It says, almost all of you know that eXch started as a project aimed at demonstrating to the community that alternatives can exist during times when there were none. We have never had any financial goals with this project, and rather, we conducted an experiment that was unexpectedly successful. Recently, we received confirmation of information we had previously, thanks to some friends we have even in the state intelligence sector, that our project is the subject of an active transatlantic operation aimed at forcibly shutting down our project and prosecuting us for money laundering and terrorism. Even though we have been able to operate despite some failed attempts to shut down our infrastructure, attempts that have also been confirmed to be part of this operation, we don't see any point in operating in a hostile environment where we're the target simply because some people misinterpret our goals. Starting from the date of the merger with a new management team this month, and as a result of some urgent meetings, the majority of us voted to cease and retreat instead of going against strong winds, because none of us want to cause any harm to innocent people or this forum. The goals we certainly never had in mind were to enable illicit activities such as money laundering or terrorism, as we are being accused of now. We have absolutely no motivation to operate a project where we are viewed as criminals. This doesn't make any sense to us. Originally, we were just a team of privacy enthusiasts with main areas of interest quite distant from cryptocurrency, where we saw the absolutely unfair happenings. This project was an attempt to restore balance in this industry. Our project has demonstrated that an instant exchange done properly can be more effective than any centralized mixer in terms of privacy, which is why it has been referred to as a mixer many times by third parties, even though we have continually rejected this label. Our project has shown that it's possible to operate without abusing customers with nonsensical policies. Unlike projects that will accept this announcement as a weight lifted off their shoulders that pretend to believe the false idea that confiscating crypto from customers somehow prevents money laundering, who rely on random and unreliable scoring systems created and operated by companies that are parasites aimed to extract money from their governments by providing consulting based on the segregation of the crypto space and the blockchain data. If we were to look at these projects from the perspective of preventing money laundering and terrorism financing, any instant exchangers that screen their customer deposits using third-party APIs and appeal to nonsensical AML KYC terms are far from preventing money laundering and terrorism. If they were serious about this, they would need to stop hiding behind shelf offshore companies, start conducting strict due diligence on every customer, which none of them do in reality. The absurdity is compounded by the absolute uselessness of the address score reporting APIs they use, as any of these screening mechanisms can be easily bypassed. Our project will also demonstrate that even without it, this space will continue to have ways and instruments of those engaging in illicit activities to effectively launder their funds. Thus, the goal of stopping exchange under the belief that it may stop all money laundering in the world is ridiculous. And it goes on a little further, but that is basically the announcement. So a couple really important things they point out here. One, they are being targeted by law enforcement. Very clearly, there are attempts to shut down their infrastructure, as they claim. They are probably legal warnings that they're receiving through the mail, through email or whatever. They are absolutely being targeted. A key thing, though, is they are being very vocal about how they do not support money laundering or terrorism. And, it seems like from their statements, they're towing a fine line here. We've seen with Samurai Wallet, one of the sticking points to the charges being put against Samurai is that they were vocally supportive of these illegal, circumstances that could be involved with their CoinJoin implementation. In this case, eXch is basically saying, we do not support this. It just happened, okay? Now, they are obviously aware of this happening, and so what the feds are going to argue is they enabled these illicit activities instead of shutting it down. But what they're going to argue is, how could we have known that these were, illegal activities? And they point out in their statement that these third-party APIs are useless, which they are. We've talked about this many, many times. So this is a really interesting case. I do not think it's over. I believe that these guys will eventually be brought to charges. I think it's only a matter of time. And this is a really important case because this is a non-KYC CoinSwap service. And to date, these services have not been brought to court. We haven't seen one. We've seen Bitcoin mixers. We've seen, Tornado Cash, which was kind of like a mixing service. We have not seen a CoinSwap implementation. And this one is strictly taking one cryptocurrency, sending it to another. And this is a centralized application. It's not decentralized. So what I believe is going to happen is that any type of centralized non-KYC exchange is going to be a target, and that this is going to set the precedent. So the thing is, these guys, based on their Bitcoin Talk thread, they launched in April 2014. That's a long time ago. So these guys have been around for a minute. And it seems like they've been pretty hardcore in being non-KYC and being a swap service. But here they are clearly being targeted. And we actually had a story about 2 or 3 weeks ago where they had said that they were going under new management, it was a weird story. You could tell that something was happening behind the scenes. Now they're just saying they're shutting down. And I am under the belief that we're going to see some charges being brought to them soon because the feds are pissed. they're pissed off that they could not stop this hack, and they're pissed off that nothing is working when it comes to these hacks that are happening. We're seeing this not only with exchanges being targeted, but ransomware. They can't stop it, and it really pisses them off. So, they're not only mad about that, but 2, they want to use this to their advantage, right? How are they going to use this to their advantage? Well, they're going to look at this and they're going to set precedent. And this is an ongoing theme we have seen with this administration and the administrations before. They're using judgments in court to get their way. Samurai Wall and Tornado Cash, they're still going to court. The DOJ has not stopped with that. And they are still charging them with crimes. And they are going to set precedents in that manner. So yeah, I know that Tornado Cash is no longer on the sanctions list. Doesn't mean anything. I know the DOJ, put out that letter saying, hey, we want to relax, or we don't want to just charge people doing these services. And there are all these people celebrating. Well, guess what? Doesn't matter. They are still pursuing anything that can allow for non-KYC usage or any type of privacy or any type of open source freedom service. They're targeting all of these. Look at their actions and not their words. And this is just the latest example. Now, to expand off this, Ben Zhu, who is, I believe, the CEO of Bybit, or is one of the main people behind it, he put out a summary of the hacked funds. And he said that 68.57% are traceable, 27.59% have gone dark, and 3.84% have been frozen. The untraceable funds primarily flowed into mixers, then through bridges to peer-to-peer and over-the-counter platforms. Recently, we have observed that the mixer mainly used by the North Koreans is Wasabi. After a certain amount of Bitcoin was washed through Wasabi, a small portion of it entered Crypto Mixer, Tornado Cash, and Railgun. Then multiple cross-chain and swap services were carried out through platforms such as Thorchain, eXch, Lombard, Li-Fi, Stargate, and SunSwap. Eventually, it entered OTC, over-the-counter, or P2P, peer-to-peer fiat currency exchange services. So there you have it. Railgun, a cryptocurrency project that I've been putting down recently, they're actually appearing in this. So I find that to be quite interesting. The thing with Railgun is they actually are very compliant. So if they were to receive some sort of sanctioned address, they would blacklist it. That's kind of the purpose of their protocol. So it's interesting that they're still being used for something like this. You see, Tornado Cash was also used, as well as this project Crypto Mixer, which I've never heard of. But that was also used as well as all of these swap services, many of which I don't know. I've never heard of Lombard or Stargate or whatever. Thorchain, of course, we have talked about. They were used as well for this hack. And I'm wondering if they're also going to be brought in on charges, because these guys, Thorchain and eXch, were the two services that were really heavily used while these funds were being laundered. So interesting stuff, and I am sure this is not the last time we will be hearing about this. All right, let's move on to our weekly Zcash beatdown. I'm kidding, but not really. Past couple episodes, we have been talking about the potential Binance delisting that is happening to Zcash. And I've been providing a lot of commentary on this because what Zcash is doing right now is exactly what you do not want to do if you are facing a delisting. If you are a serious project and you are facing a delisting, the worst thing you can do is grovel. And that is the word of the week, folks. Grovel, because that is what is happening right now with Zcash. They are groveling. They're on their hands and knees begging to stay on Binance. Why? Because if they get delisted, the price is going to get nuked, which has already happened to Firo, which was delisted recently, under similar circumstances. Firo has privacy. They had been doing whatever they could to stay on Binance, and none of it mattered. They got delisted because you can't negotiate with terrorists. Binance, they pump and dumped them. They got rid of them. And now Zcash is next on the chopping block. So this week, I have noticed a lot of the Zcash supporters have come out of the woodwork, and they are, all coming out in support of Zcash staying on Binance. Now, why are they doing this? Again, because price. And the kind of hidden story behind this is that Zcash is actually running out of money. They are going to vote on extending the dev tax. There was a report a while back where basically they're like out of funds. And if the price goes down further, they're even more screwed because, the funds they have saved in case of emergency are going to be worth even less. And if they sell those funds, the price is going to go even lower, right? So it's this really bad feedback loop that they are facing. Essentially, they had hedged on the price of Zcash going up, and that didn't happen. And the grift here is that with Zcash, you have a team on salary being paid. And they are, doing this for the education and the research, and they are good and they are trusted by the company that's investing in them, and they are compliant, blah, blah, blah. And, it's great that they are doing a lot of research and stuff. I'm not going to put that, as a negative against them. But the problem is everything else about the project, okay? It's just run really, really poorly. And what they're not telling you is that if they run out of money, they're not going to work anymore, okay? They're not telling you that. So they're, kind of, saying like, oh, well, it's terrible that Binance is going to delist us. We'll just keep working, and we're putting out the best product we can. And their supporters who are like sipping the Kool-Aid, they're like, yeah, like it's really unfair that you're getting delisted and blah, blah, blah. What they don't realize though is that, the researchers, they're aware that if they don't get paid, they're just going to stop working. They have the image that they're doing everything right, but like they're misleading their investors. What their investors don't realize is like Zcash is like actually pretty close to folding. And if the price is like severed, it's going to look even worse unless some rich benefactor comes in, which could happen. But it's not looking good. And as we've seen historically, not only has Zcash hemorrhaged value, it just hasn't gone up in value, it's also hemorrhaging usage. The transactions are at an all-time low. So it's just really bad news for Zcash. And of course, as we have really talked about, instead of focusing on building their culture and building their usage, they've just been focused on being compliant. And look where that's got them. So yeah, Zuko here, he put out an all-time tweet where he said, but I'm not a Binance hater, far from it. I think Binance is excellent. This is what he said. Here's just a smattering of things I've posted about Binance over the years. There are more going back many years, but I got tired of scrolling through my own tweets to find them. I swear to God he wrote this. And then there's a tweet thread where he is just on his knees for Binance. And it's just multiple tweets of him just, simping for CZ and Binance. It's super cringe. Like, he's completely unaware of how pathetic he looks here. Completely unaware. When you are, simping for a KYC centralized exchange, you are ruining any credibility that you thought you had. Like, let's compare what happened with Zcash, what happened to Monero to what is happening with Zcash, right? What happened with Monero? It got delisted. We moved on, right? We were like, screw them. With Zcash, everyone's freaking out because they know deep down that if Zcash is delisted, the value is going to get nuked. And if the value gets nuked, the chances of them prolonging their project goes in the dirt. Because the thing is, that's what Zcash really is. It's a research project. That's what you're buying, essentially. You're buying research. You are funding a research project. Okay, and some may think, well, that's a good thing because long term, the better research will yield more usage. Well, what has that shown us? What has that way of thinking shown us? It's wrong. Okay, because what Zcash has shown us is that research does not lead to usage. In fact, it's the opposite. People are just not using Zcash, and we have so much data showing that. Okay. In this case, Zcash is a research project, and that is what you're buying. So when the money runs out, those researchers are going to just go elsewhere because they're not getting paid anymore. And who's going to be left? And that's the problem. So yeah, in addition to Zuko, I've been seeing all the main Zcash talking heads, coming out talking about Binance, talking about how unfair it is, things of that nature. And our boy here, Barry Silbert, total snake. I mean, this guy is one of the biggest pieces of garbage in cryptocurrency. I don't even think he's tweeted at all during this bull run because he's been dealing with like legal issues and stuff, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. This guy's such a piece of garbage. I purposely avoid reading about him just because he is, Michael Saylor-esque in how he views himself. Anyway, he came out from hiding like a groundhog, and he had a little blip here where he talked about Zcash. I have not listened to this yet, so let's check out this clip of Barry Silbert shilling Zcash to save his bags.
I'm still going to die on the hill that privacy tokens and Zcash in particular.
You've been shilling me those for years.
I have never been as convinced that privacy tokens and Zcash in particular is we're going to wake up one day, people are going to realize financial privacy is important to them. And, oh, wow, there's a version of Bitcoin that's private.
This guy, he's been in hiding for the past 2 years, sees that Zcash is, on the cusp of really facing a delisting from Binance. So he comes out talking about how one day people are going to wake up. Like, dude, they've already woken up. Okay? They've already woken up. They are using cryptocurrency privately if they need to, and they're not using Zcash. I don't disagree with what he's saying, but you just know that he's a total snake and that everything he says is just, diarrhea coming out of his mouth. So, I mean, him coming out and saying this, and also the Winklevoss twins, those guys, the types who come out once every 1 or 2 years and say, oh, Zcash is the future, then they just never talk about it. You can just hear the bags that they're holding. You can just hear that because that's what this amounts to. They know that they made an early investment into this and they're getting completely screwed, and it's going to get worse probably for them, and they don't want to admit that. So that's enough talking about Zcash. What's next? So here's a tweet here from Unstoppable Wallet. This is a wallet that is adding Monero in the near future. Basically, they had a tweet saying that a user reported they weren't able to send Tether from their wallet. And it turns out the reason for that is because Tether had blacklisted that person's address. And as a result, all transfers and swaps failed. The funds still showed in his wallet, but were completely frozen. So, this is what happens where you are using a stablecoin that can be frozen. And, newsflash, all these stablecoins are going to be like that in the not-so-distant future. This is kind of a foreshadowing of really the future of the stablecoin market. They're all going to be censorable, and that is really what governments want. It's what law enforcement wants, and it's why long-term stablecoins are going to suck for the purpose of digital cash. Good thing we have, projects like Monero, so it's not really an issue for us, but it is an issue for the common man, and that's going to push them more and more to the open source projects of which we support. Now, next up, we have our favorite Loony Lummis. She's with CoinDesk, and she predicts the Bitcoin market cap will grow to $200 trillion, which is $9.5 million per Bitcoin. Now, here's the thing. I have a clip. I'm going to play the clip. And what I've been doing for this week as well as past couple weeks, any clip I am playing on the show, I have not heard yet. I just see the headline and just bookmark it for later because I just know it's going to make for good content. Okay. So that's what we got here. We got Loony Lummis being interviewed by CoinDesk. I have not heard this yet. It's about 2 minutes long. Let's check it out.
Talk about how you communicate what's going on in this industry in just a second. But our last Spotlight episode featured Michael Saylor, and he really kind of unpacked his plan towards this $200 trillion Bitcoin network. You mentioned him as one of the people you speak to about what's going on in this industry. You listen to what he has to say. Do you think that Bitcoin can be a $200 trillion network?
I do. When you look at the fact that it is fully decentralized, that it is immutable, that it is scarce, that as more of it is mined, the volatility is going to decline. Its use cases will expand. All of these events surrounding it as it matures as an asset are going to make it more useful. It is faster. It is cheaper. The Lightning Network that now can lay on top of it makes it more useful as a means of exchange. Its continued growth as a store of value is going to be, I think, its strongest future use. When you look at the US dollar, that because of inflation is declining in value every year much more quickly than we'd like to see, its use case as a store of value is not good. Its use case as a means of exchange is very strong, always will be. But if I was going to save, I'd want to save in Bitcoin, not in US dollars. So I think we're seeing more and more people realize that because it's immutable, because it's easy to store and retain either in an individual wallet or through a custodian, it's easy to buy now because of the exchange traded funds that have been created by very blue chip companies that people are used to using for all kinds of investments. It's become more available and user friendly for people who are more used to traditional assets. And I think all these things, when you add them together, have expanded the use case for Bitcoin.
All right, so for a lot of that speech that she just gave, actually somewhat reasonable. I mean, this is really the summarized mindset of the Bitcoin maximalist in the current year, right? We have ETFs now. You can hold your Bitcoin custodial. It's never been easier, right? Bitcoin's a tech stock is really what she's saying. And it's better to save in Bitcoin than it is to hold dollars, which is true. I agree with that. Notice, though, how the entire point of the conversation was the headline, right? The headline was Bitcoin is going to be worth $9.5 billion, million dollars per Bitcoin, right? 9.5 million per Bitcoin is the headline. She's not saying that, right? If anything, what she's saying is actually a more restrained take on it, where she even says that the volatility is going to decrease over time, which I agree with. You know, as the Bitcoin volatility goes down, Bitcoin will be seen as like kind of just a savings vehicle. And this is, I'm kind of regurgitating what their mind point is, or their viewpoint is. And yeah, I'm kind of regurgitating what their viewpoint is, but there is logic here where if there is a kind of demand and the volatility goes down and we have diminishing returns, it'll just be kind of like a safe little savings vehicle. And that is kind of how Bitcoin has transitioned. And I actually think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, especially if we do see diminishing returns continue to take place, which I kind of hope is the case, we will see this market start to mature because the Moonboys will be pushed out. And this is really the best case scenario. However, the Moonboys, they're still here. And as proof of that, the headline of this video, right? Bitcoin's going to grow to $200 trillion market cap, $9.5 million per Bitcoin. That is such an immature way of looking at what Bitcoin is, right? If you just view it as, you know, the properties that they're talking about, decentralized, immutable, blah, blah, blah. If you were just looking at that point and you're saying to yourself, you know, there is a finite amount and it is a store of value, there's really nothing wrong with that because there is scarcity with Bitcoin. But this like Moonboy garbage, man, it's just going to defeat them. It really is just one of those things where until more Bitcoiners start speaking out against this, it's not going to go away. And unfortunately, it's just the viewpoint I am espousing to you is heretical for most Bitcoiners, and it's not fun. It's actually quite. You know, I sound like Scrooge. You know, I'm like, you know, talking about how we should, you know, not talk about price. It's so boring to them, right? But you know, if they see diminishing returns, which I believe they will, you're going to see these Moonboys start to get more and more disappointed. And we're like 10 years from now, right? And Bitcoin is like trading at like, 200,000. Is that a bad thing? It's very, very likely, I think, that Bitcoin is going to see diminishing returns. And if we have that, these like lofty projections, they're going to age so poorly, as we have seen time and time again. The one last point, too, is that Lummis is really in agreement with the maximalists, whether they want to believe it or not, that the store value is the use case that they are leaning towards. I really do not see them going back to medium of exchange. And, that's just highlighted by usage that we're seeing right now. Obviously, problematically, there are issues with how Bitcoin's fee model works, how that's supposed to support the mining network. But they're not really thinking about that right now. So we will see what happens with that. But with these projections, like, I really think they're just making numbers up, right? And when time and time again, when you're promising these just like massive gains, people are eventually going to get tired of it. And I think we're starting to see that fatigue set in. I've actually seen quite a few Bitcoiners post like, hey guys, we need to pump the brakes. Like I've seen that mindset starting to percolate. It's starting to grow a little bit. And I'll say it time and time again, the best thing to happen to Bitcoin is if it slows down and it turns really into digital gold. If this is what Bitcoin is, that is probably the best thing to happen to it. If it is just like gold and it just kind of slowly grows over time, that is easily the best thing that can happen to it because, the Moonboys will be out and then we can focus on improving the chain. And if it's not going to be used as a medium of exchange, well, it can be used as a store of value and we can focus on the quantum proofing. Really the best thing that can happen to it. And as a alternate, we can use Monero, and that's what's happening. Really, Monero is a great alternative to Bitcoin. It's very complementary, and there's no reason why the two can't coexist. You also have something like Litecoin, which can be used for kind of, on-ramping and for quicker payments. No reason why these cryptocurrencies can't coexist. Of course, though, to get support for Monero is really what we need. And from the perspective of the state, they're going to keep pushing Monero away because of how powerful it is. Coin Center, they dropped an article about the Department of Justice and how the Department of Justice should drop 3 cases. Now, the first 2 cases are cases we've highlighted a lot on the show, being Tornado Cash and Samurai Wallet. But the third is one that I have not heard of until now, so I wanted to talk about real quick, and that is the case of Anton and James Peraire-Bueno. Now, these guys are brothers, and apparently they earned $25 million exploiting a vulnerability in MEV Boost, which is open source software for Ethereum. And they are charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering. So basically, the DOJ targets validators rather than developers, but the principle is the same. Validators are digital infrastructure providers, not fiduciaries. They have no regulatory duties to the third parties. Penalizing them for failing to meet vague expectations violates due process and discourages innovation. Validators are neutral infrastructure. Validators are like internet service providers or electric utilities. They execute protocol-defined rules automatically and without discretion. They are meant to act in their own economic interest, and Ethereum's design anticipates that behavior. MEV, which stands for Miner Extractable Value, arises naturally from the structure and is not prohibited by law or protocol. The DOJ's theory would impose liability on validators for disrupting other actors' expected MEV profits. But validators owe no duty to preserve these expectations. Their only obligation is to build blocks. Criminalizing this neutral, rules-based behavior would inject uncertainty and chill participation. The DOJ alleges the Peraire-Bueno brothers stole from MEV bots by gaining access to transaction data. In reality, they used public tools and data to outcompete others, a novel but legitimate strategy within the protocol's rules. That's not theft, it's competition. Ethereum does not ban exploiting MEV inefficiencies, it incentivizes it. If reform is needed, the fix lies in protocol design, not criminal prosecution. Calling this wire fraud misunderstands both MEV and legal standards. Validators are strangers in open competition. Inferring a duty between them is like accusing someone of wrongdoing for opening a better pizza parlor across the street and driving their competitor out of business. In common law, that's damnum absque injuria, which stands for harm without legal injury, and it's not actionable. MEV extraction is a regrettable but expected part of block validation. Selectively criminalizing successful actors distorts the neutrality of Ethereum's base layer and misrepresents the nature of validator competition. If the government wants to outlaw this activity, it must do so prospectively with new laws, not by stretching wire fraud statutes to retroactively criminalize open, competitive behavior. And I'll just read this last few paragraphs from this article. Again, this is courtesy of Coin Center. It says here, criminalizing block propagation behavior that conforms to protocol rules sends a dangerous message. Neutral infrastructure operation could carry criminal liability based on unknown third-party expectations that will chill validator participation and push operators offshore. This case raises serious constitutional concerns. Criminal penalties without clear legal notice or defined duties violate due process. The DOJ is holding a weak hand. No theft, no fraud, no legal duty, just aggressive prosecution of rule-following competition. Sound familiar, right? This is pretty much what we've been seeing with Tornado Cash and Samurai, with this one being that these guys had figured out an exploit using this software, and they did it. And so they extracted a bunch of value. It was like $25 million, but they're accused of stealing that money. Now, did they steal it, though? I mean, they were using the tools that were publicly available, right? So, if anything, they were just being smart. It's a really interesting case, one that I hadn't heard of until now. It's another case where the feds are trying to set precedents through the courts. Instead of trying to go through Congress, they're trying to get the laws done now. And they're attacking people who, by all means, were following the rules that were put out before them. You know, remember with Samurai Wallet, they were following the rules to a T based on what was available. It was the... what was it called? I forgot the name of the document they were following. But they were like actually following the law as it was understood at the time. What the DOJ is trying to do is interpret the law as they want to and retroactively go back and attack people who, by all means, were following the law as they and pretty much all of us understood it. Because, you know, looking at Samurai Wallet, Tornado Cash, and now this case with the MEV exploitation, these people were all just following the law, and there was nothing illegal about what they were doing. But retroactively, they can go back and claim, in this case, that they were committing wire fraud, which is kind of really stretching the definition of what wire fraud actually is. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Monero news to close out the show. We got a bunch of little updates here, and then I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. Nothing new here, right? First off, happy birthday to Monero. She's now 11 years old. Crazy to see this project expand and grow over the years and really turn into one of the more reputable projects in cryptocurrency today. I would argue it's in the top 5 for reputation, and there's a lot of reason behind that. A lot of people have worked really hard on different parts of it, so it's really great to see. Now, some other news. Full chain membership proofs. They are coming. There was another Monero Research Lab discussion, and Justin Berman, he came out with his new estimate for how things are coming. He said that right now there is the alpha stressnet, which is going to start, he is saying, May 21st. The main stressnet will be open in July, and the public testnet will be in Q4. So things are moving along here. Full chain membership proofs are being developed. Things are happening. Okay, so we will see when things actually will appear. I am hopeful that with the public testnet being in Q4, that means Q1 next year we will have it actually drop. But we shall wait and see for that. The next thing, this was on Reddit, was a post by the Monero Policy Working Group about decentralization and the market and crypto assets regulation in Europe. Now, I have talked a lot about how we should not negotiate with terrorists, right? So it's kind of funny in this Reddit post. The post is about how decentralization is defined. It goes into a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's actually quite long. It's an interesting read though. And what's funny though is that in the comments, this guy with the username Don't Tread on Me, he actually says Monero does not negotiate with terrorists, which is something I've been saying a lot on the show. So I'm pretty sure that's a fan of me. So I'm happy that he said that phrase. And if not, we're on the same wavelength, right? Because don't negotiate with these guys. Here's the thing, though. I don't really see these guys as negotiating with exchanges, or in this case, it would be with the people who are putting out the MICAR, Market and Crypto Assets Regulation. But it is bringing up a good counter argument to what they're saying with how they define things. That's what you'll see with a lot of these policies that get released. The definitions of things are very broad, or there's misunderstandings, and you have dinosaurs who are like co-sponsoring these bills who have no idea what any of this means, and how you interpret laws can really have an impact on entire economies. So actually defining what decentralization is, I think actually is quite important. And I'll read the summary here, or the conclusion. They say, in the murky, muddy, and distinctly dirty world of DL techno-infused enfranchisement, I don't know what that means, it says, decentralization might be viewed as pseudo-fantasia. Much like the word blockchain, we have reached the stage of apoplectic semantic satiation. Who the fuck wrote this? Oh man, anyway, it means everything and nothing simultaneously. Decentralization is parroted as the panacea for humanity's ills, leveraged on Web3 and driven by a desire to build everything on a rich bed of proto-meat. Okay, I gotta stop here. Whoever freaking wrote this needs to get their head out of their ass, because this is like this is like ridiculous. Come on, guys. We don't have to wax poetic here. We can just say that the definition of decentralization is shit. I'm not going to read the rest of this. This is too pretentious for me. But basically, yeah, they're saying decentralization is a loosely covered subject, and we should be, what we should be doing is arguing in this way, right? Not getting on our knees, oh, please list us, oh, please don't make us illegal. Fuck that, right? We're just having a mature conversation. In this case, though, I hadn't read this before I recorded, so this is like off the cuff here. Whoever wrote this, come on, dude. You don't have to talk like that. This isn't a creative writing class. All right. Let's move on here. Shop and Bit stats were released, and Monero got beat this month here. After 2 months of XMR dominance, Bitcoin reclaims the crown in March with 68.9% of all Shop and Bit payments. Monero had 29.3%, Fiat 1%, Lightning 0.8%. So there you go. Monero got beat this month. We'll see what happens next month. I also see a tweet. This is from Seth about Kagi. I've been hearing a lot about the search engine from not just Seth, from a couple people, but basically they're going to be accepting Monero payments starting soon. So that's really cool. I guess they're a very effective search engine, and hey, they support Monero. That's great. So good to see. All right, our last thing we're talking about today is that we are going to space. Okay, not really. But we're going to be talking about this. I don't know who's smoking what here, but there was this story this week about this new CCS proposal about a satellite with a Monero node. Now, that's fine, okay? Where it gets crazy, though, is that this individual is asking for $6 million. They're 12 years old. I'm not even making this up. This is absurd to even comment on this. They're from China, so they can barely speak English. And yeah, they're asking for $6 million. They have absolutely no track record. Why is this even a thing? Now, I see this, and I'm already like, oh gosh, here we go again. Like, scamming community funds happens in like every crypto, okay? It's happened in Monero in the past. What's mind-blowing to me, though, is how many people like took this seriously. like a lot of people on Twitter were like saying it was interesting. Now, I'm sorry, I'm kind of roasting you guys here, because there are a couple, I have listeners who like probably were like thinking about this, but like stuff like this is like, it makes me realize that, you know, a lot of people, they assume the best in other people, okay? Especially if they're supportive of Monero, okay? If someone comes out and says, hey, we want to do something, you're kind of like, okay. But then they say, but we're going to use Monero. You kind of have like, I've noticed this. There's a lot of people who have like more goodwill towards that person, and they kind of like block out all the like red flags that this person has. And I'm not just saying that because they're from China. Okay, there's a ton of red flags here that this whole thing has. That is just like, the fact that some people like immediately took it like face value is kind of mind blowing to me. So sorry to roast you guys who were like talking about that, but like, come on, you guys, you sound retarded here. I don't know what the fuck this is, but like, I have noticed that over time where like, you know, there are these like projects that get announced and they're clearly crap. They clearly don't have much to stand on, but because they use Monero, people are supportive of it, and I don't like that. Okay, just because they're using Monero doesn't mean that we give them a pass on everything. Likewise, because somebody supports the concepts of peer-to-peer digital cash doesn't mean they get a pass on everything, right? For example, I went on a rant about how I don't like Xano, right? They seem like fine people. They're supportive of Monero, but there are legitimate things I have that I have issues with. And so just because like they're supportive of, you know, peer-to-peer digital cash doesn't mean I have to like their project. We can be skeptical of things, right? And we should be skeptical of things. So, you know, when I see a CCS proposal like this, I'm just like, what the hell, guys? Did you guys actually read this? Another one too, I saw was like some Airbnb, but with Monero. And I'm just thinking that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I like the whole thing with Monero is that you want to be like anonymous and private, right? Why would you combine that with trusting somebody to stay in your dwelling anonymously? Like, that's just a bad idea. Okay. The Airbnb model works because like you're giving your identity away. And even then it's like hard to control that, right? So these ideas that come up and go over time, it kind of just shows you like how illegitimate some of this economy is, where people are kind of just throwing stuff at the wall. And to me, at least, it's a reminder that just because we're friendly with how we use Monero doesn't mean we have to take everything at face value, right? Being critical is so freaking important. If we're not critical of things and we're not skeptical of things, we're going to get swindled. And for what it's worth, it has happened to Monero in the past, where there's been these announced projects and then they just run away with the bag. But in this case, we have like some 12-year-old Chinese kid who's now jumping in on the grift, which is pretty remarkable that this guy was even given the time of day to talk about these sorts of things. Anyway, that's enough of that ranting. I'm going to end the episode there. Thanks for the support, everybody. We're going to be having a lot of good stuff coming in the near future. I'm really excited about it. xmrchat.com/Xenu. As always, antimoonboy.com if you just want a summary of everything. And I'm going to get out of your hair. Have a nice week, everybody.